Have you ever really stopped and wondered what makes you, well, you? It turns out, deep inside every single one of your cells, there's a biological blueprint. It's the master instruction manual for building and running your entire body. Today, we're going to learn how to read it.
So let's go on a little journey, shall we? We're going to zoom in, way in. We'll go from the person you see in the mirror, past all the tissues and organs, and dive right into one of your trillions of microscopic cells, because inside that cell's nucleus, that's where the magic really is.
And that brings us to the big question, doesn't it? It seems totally impossible. How on earth do you cram the instructions for something as complex as a human being into a space so small you can't even see it? Well, the answer is just a masterpiece of biological engineering.
Okay, our journey to that instruction manual officially starts now. And the big secret? It all comes down to these incredibly organized, tightly packed structures that hold every last bit of your genetic code.
They're called chromosomes. And you can think of a chromosome as a ridiculously long piece of DNA that's been spooled up for storage. I mean, think about it. If you had to pack, say, miles of thread into a tiny little box, you wouldn't just stuff it in there, right? No way. You'd wind it super neatly around spools. Your cells do the exact same thing, using special proteins called histones as those spools.
And this is just a brilliant illustration of that whole process. You can actually see the famous DNA double helix wrapping around those histone proteins, and then that whole thing coils up, and then that coils up again and again until you get this dense, compact chromosome. It's an absolutely genius organizational system. So, we've found the instruction manual, and we know it's organized into these volumes we call chromosomes. Now, let's get a closer look at the anatomy of one of these volumes to really understand how it's put together.
First up, the chromatid. So, before a cell is ready to divide, it has to make a copy of all its DNA. A chromatid is basically one half of that copied chromosome. It's like taking a page from your instruction manual and making a perfect photocopy of it.
And here you can see exactly what I'm talking about. On the left, that's an unduplicated chromosome, just a single structure. But after the cell copies its DNA, you get that classic X shape you see on the right. That X is actually made of two identical sister chromatids, stuck together.
So what's holding those two identical photocopies together? That's the centromere. You can think of it like a little staple, right in the middle, keeping the two sister chromatids attached until it's time for them to separate.
Now this is a really important one. Homologous chromosomes. See, in most of your cells, chromosomes come in matched pairs. You get one from your mom and one from your dad. These pairs are homologous. They're the same size, the same shape, and they have genes for the exact same traits. A good analogy is like having two editions of the same cookbook. They've got all the same recipes, but maybe one has a little note in the margin or a slightly different ingredient. You get one cookbook from each parent.
Okay, pay close attention here, because this slide clears up a super common point of confusion. On the left, you've got a homologous pair. See, one's green, one's purple. They're a matched set, but they came from two different parents. Now look to the right. After they both get copied, each one is made of two identical sister chromatids. So remember, homologous means a parental pair, sister chromatids means an identical copy.
All right, we've got the structure of the volumes down. Now let's zoom in even deeper. It's time to actually read the words on the page, the individual recipes that make you who you are.
And each one of those recipes is called a gene. It's just a specific little section of DNA that has the code to make a specific protein. And proteins are the real workhorses of your body. They do pretty much everything, from building your muscles to determining your eye color.
And genes aren't just sprinkled around randomly. No, each gene has a very specific address, or locus, on a chromosome. And as you can see right here, the gene for, say, trait P is in the exact same spot on both of those homologous chromosomes. Same for A and B. The address is always the same, even if the version of the gene at that address is a little different. And those different versions of a gene, we call them alleles. So you have a gene for eye color, but you might have the allele for brown eyes from one parent and the allele for blue eyes from the other. Same recipe, just slightly different ingredients.
And this is where things get really cool. It's all about how the specific combination of alleles you get from your parents actually determines the traits we see. It really is a tale of two alleles.
So since you always get one allele from each parent for a given gene, you've got two basic possibilities. If you get two of the exact same allele, like two for brown eyes, you're homozygous for that trait. But if you get two different alleles, say one for brown and one for blue, then you're heterozygous. Simple as that.
So what's the outcome? Well, this table breaks it down. Basically, if you have even one dominant allele, it usually makes a working protein, and that's the trait you're going to see. The only way for a recessive trait to show up is if you get two recessive copies. The key takeaway here is that a dominant allele is like a loud voice. If it's there at all, it gets heard. You only hear the quiet recessive voice if both copies are the quiet.
Okay, let's zoom back out for a second. We've seen how the instructions are written. Now let's look at how your body organizes this entire genetic library in different kinds of cells.
It turns out your body uses two different filing systems. Most of your cells are what we call diploid. That means they have two full sets of chromosomes, the complete collection. But there are a few very special cells that are haploid, and they only carry one single set.
So where are they? Well, your diploid cells are your somatic cells. That's just a fancy word for body cells. So your skin, your liver, your brain, all diploid. The haploid cells are your gametes, and those are your sex cells, the egg and sperm, which have a very, very important job.
And this visual comparison is just fantastic. On the left, that's a karyotype, which is basically a picture of all the chromosomes from a diploid cell. You can clearly see 23 pairs, for a total of 46. And on the right, that's what's in a haploid cell, just 23 single chromosomes, one from each of the pairs.
And this right here, this is where it all comes full circle, just beautifully. A haploid sperm carrying its 23 chromosomes fuses with a haploid egg carrying its own set of 23. And what's the result? A brand new, totally unique diploid cell called a zygote, with the full set of 46 chromosomes, all ready to grow into a new person. The whole system is just an amazing way to create genetic diversity.
So there it is, the elegant, incredible blueprint of life, packaged and copied and passed down through generations. It is the foundation of everything. Which kind of leaves us with one last big thought. If this whole system is so precise, what happens when just one instruction, a single letter in that blueprint, gets changed? Well, that's a story for another time. Thanks for joining me.